Step into the art of Poirot, where Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot masters the craft of mystery. In the shadowed halls of Ashburn Hall, a crimson ribbon hides a deadly secret. When heiress Eleanor Vane vanishes on the eve of her engagement, leaving only a cryptic note about a vermilion vow, Hercule Poirot is summoned to unravel a web of lies. Was she kidnapped, or did she flee a scandal that could ruin her family? As clues, a sapphire ring, a torn shawl, hidden letters emerge. Every guest harbors a motive, and every alibi cracks. Can Poirot's little grey cells expose the truth before the vow claims another victim? Dive into a classic Agatha Christie mystery where suspense twists through a closed circle of secrets, leading to a shocking, logical reveal. Chapter 1. The Crimson Invitation. The late summer sun cast a golden haze over the manicured lawns of Ashburn Hall, a sprawling Jacobean manor nestled in the heart of the Devon countryside. Its ivy-clad walls and mullioned windows exuded an air of timeless grandeur. Yet beneath the serene elegance, a quiet unease simmered. The occasion was the engagement celebration of Miss Eleanor Vane, heiress to the Vane shipping fortune, and her fiancé, Mr. Lawrence Whitmore, a barrister of modest means but impeccable reputation. The guest list was small but illustrious, a carefully curated circle of family and friends, all gathered to toast the union beneath the chandeliers of the great hall. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion of Hercule Poirot, stood by a tall window, his gaze drifting across the emerald expanse of the estate. The air was thick with the scent of roses from the garden, mingling with the faint tang of cigar smoke from the gentleman lingering on the terrace. Hastings, in his neatly pressed suit, felt a flicker of nostalgia for such gatherings, where civility masked the undercurrents of ambition, envy, and old grudges. He adjusted his tie, his thoughts interrupted by the arrival of a footman bearing a silver tray. "Captain Hastings, sir," the footman said, bowing slightly. "A letter for you." Hastings took the envelope, its crimson wax seal embossed with the Vane family crest. The note within was penned in a precise, elegant hand. "Dear Captain Hastings, your presence at Ashburn Hall this weekend would be most welcome. A matter of some delicacy has arisen, and I believe your friend, Monsieur Hercule Poirot, might find it of interest. Discretion is paramount. Yours sincerely, Sir Reginald Vane." Hastings frowned. Sir Reginald, Eleanor's father, was not known for cryptic invitations. The mention of Poirot piqued his curiosity, for the little Belgian detective was not one to be summoned lightly. Yet, the note's vagueness suggested something more than a social call. Hastings tucked the letter into his pocket and glanced across the room. The guests mingled with practiced ease, their laughter and clinking glasses belying any tension. Eleanor, stout man with a stern brow, conversed with his sister, Lady Beatrice Vane, whose sharp eyes missed nothing. Nearby, Dr. Julian Carver, the family physician, sipped his champagne with a distracted air, while Mrs. Clara Whitmore, Lawrence's widowed mother, hovered protectively near her son. The group was completed by Miss Lydia Gray, Eleanor's childhood friend, whose quiet demeanour contrasted with her striking auburn hair, and Mr. Victor Langston, a business associate of Sir Reginald, whose booming laugh filled the room. As the evening progressed, dinner was announced, and the party moved to the dining room, its long mahogany table aglow with candlelight. The conversation flowed as freely as the wine, touching on politics, literature, and the upcoming nuptials. Yet Hastings noticed small fissures in the facade of civility. Lady Beatrice's barbed remark about Lawrence's humble origins drew a tight smile from Mrs. Whitmore. Victor Langston's joviality seemed forced, his eyes darting to Sir Reginald with a hint of calculation. And Eleanor, though radiant, clutched her fiancé's arm with a touch of desperation, as if anchoring herself against an unseen storm. It was during the dessert course, poached pears drizzled with caramel, that the first note of discord sounded. A maid entered, her face pale, and whispered urgently to Sir Reginald. His expression darkened, and he excused himself, citing a minor household matter. The guests continued, but Hastings, ever observant, noted the time. 8:47 p.m. He also caught Lydia Gray's fleeting glance toward the door, her fingers tightening around her napkin. The evening drew to a close with coffee in the drawing-room, where a string quartet played softly. Eleanor, radiant yet strained, presented each guest with a small gift, a crimson velvet pouch containing a silver charm engraved with the Vane crest. "A token of our joy," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Hastings accepted his with a polite nod, but his thoughts returned to Sir Reginald's note. What matter of delicacy required Poirot's singular talents? As the guests began to retire, Hastings lingered by the fireplace, his mind turning over the evening's observations. The hall was a closed circle, its heavy oak doors locked against the world. Yet something within its walls felt amiss. He glanced at the crimson pouch in his hand, its weight unexpectedly heavy. Opening it, he found the charm and something else. A folded slip of paper, no larger than a calling card. In a hurried scrawl, it read, "The Vermilion Vow will vanish by midnight." Hastings's pulse quickened. He scanned the room, but the guests had dispersed. They're late. Chapter 2. The Vanishing Vow. The clock in Ashbourne Hall's Great Hall struck midnight, its chimes reverberating through the silent corridors like a tolling bell. Captain Hastings, unable to shake the unease of the cryptic note he had found in the crimson pouch, stood by his bedroom window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens. The Devon night was still, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and fading roses. Yet, the words, "The Vermilion Vow will vanish by midnight," echoed in his mind, a puzzle as tantalizing as it was ominous. He had resolved to wait until morning to contact Hercule Poirot, but sleep eluded him. The note, now tucked safely in his breast pocket, seemed to pulse with urgency. What was the Vermilion Vow? Was it a metaphor, a code, or something more tangible? And why had it been slipped into his gift of all the guests? Hastings' thoughts were interrupted by a faint cry, sharp and fleeting, from somewhere within the manor. He froze, straining to listen. Silence followed, broken only by the distant creak of the house settling. Dressing quickly, Hastings slipped into the corridor, his footsteps muffled on the thick Persian rug. The hall was dimly lit by wall sconces, their flickering light casting long shadows across the oak-panelled walls. He moved toward the grand staircase, pausing at the sound of hurried footsteps below. Peering over the banister, he saw a figure, a woman by the silhouette of her gown, darting toward the library. The clock now read 12:07 a.m. Hastings descended cautiously, his military instincts urging discretion. The library door was ajar, a sliver of candlelight spilling onto the polished floor. He pushed it open and found Eleanor Vane, her face pale as alabaster, clutching a small wooden box inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Her eyes widened at the sight of him, and she stepped back, the box trembling in her hands. "Captain Hastings!" she exclaimed, her voice a strained whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I might ask you the same, Miss Vane," Hastings replied, his tone gentle but firm. "I heard a cry. Are you unwell?" Eleanor hesitated, her gaze flickering to the box. "It was nothing. A dream, perhaps. I came to fetch something." Her fingers tightened around the box, and Hastings noted a faint tremor in her posture. Before he could press further, a piercing scream shattered the silence, echoing from the upper floors. Thunderous. Lady Beatrice, her hair in curlers, clutched a shawl about her shoulders, while Dr. Julian Carver, ever composed, emerged with his medical bag. Lawrence Whitmore, his shirt untucked, looked frantic, and Mrs. Clara Whitmore clung to his arm. Lydia Gray and Victor Langston followed, their expressions a mix of confusion and dread. The source of the scream was soon discovered. The guest room assigned to Miss Lydia Gray. The door stood open, revealing a scene of disarray. The bed was unmade, its sheets tangled, and a single candle lay overturned on the floor, its wax pooling on the rug. Lydia, trembling, pointed to the open window, its curtains fluttering in the night breeze. "She's gone," Lydia cried, her voice breaking. "Eleanor, she was here, talking to me, and then she just vanished." Hastings' heart sank. He had seen Eleanor in the library mere moments ago, yet Lydia's distress seemed genuine. He glanced at the others, noting their reactions. Sir Reginald's clenched fists, Lawrence's ashen face, Lady Beatrice's narrowed eyes, and Dr. Carver's calm scrutiny. Victor Langston muttered something about checking the grounds, but Mrs. Whitmore's sharp intake of breath drew attention. "Her ring," Mrs. Whitmore said, pointing to the floor. There, glinting in the candlelight, lay Eleanor's engagement ring, its sapphire stone unmistakable. "She never took it off." The group fell silent, the weight of the discovery pressing upon them. Hastings' mind raced, the note, the ribbon, the scream, and now Eleanor's disappearance. It was no coincidence. He stepped to the window, noting the absence of any ladder or rope. The drop to the ground was steep, the flower beds below undisturbed. A quick glance at the clock on the bedside table showed 12:15 a.m. The timeline was impossibly tight. Sir Reginald, his voice hoarse, declared, "We must search the house and grounds at once." And someone must telephone the police. Hastings, however, had another thought. "If I may, Sir Reginald, I believe this is a matter for Hercule Poirot. I shall contact him immediately." The baronet's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "Do it, Captain, but hurry." As the household dispersed to search, Hastings returned to his room to place the call. The operator connected him to Poirot's London flat, where the detective's voice, precise and faintly amused, answered despite the late hour. "Mon ami, Hastings, what is this disturbance in the middle of the night?" Poirot asked, his tone betraying a spark of curiosity. Hastings recounted the evening's events, the note, the scream, the ribbon, and Eleanor's vanishing. He described the ring on the floor and the untouched grounds below the window. Poirot listened in silence, then said, "This vermilion vow, Hastings, it is most intriguing. I shall take the first..." Hastings hung up. He felt a surge of relief. Poirot's methodical mind would untangle this mystery. But as he rejoined the search, the crimson ribbon in the library box loomed in his thoughts. It was no mere trinket. It was a clue, a vow, perhaps a warning. And somewhere in Ashbourne Hall, the truth lay hidden, waiting for Poirot's little grey cells to bring it to light. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Poirot. Poirot, the morning sun rose over Ashbourne Hall, its rays piercing the mist that clung to the Devon hills. The manor, so serene the previous evening,
now buzzed with a restless energy. Servants moved briskly, their whispers barely audible, while the guests gathered in the drawing room, their faces drawn with fatigue and suspicion. Eleanor Vane's disappearance had cast a pall over the household, and the discovery of her engagement ring on Lydia Gray's floor only deepened the mystery. Captain Hastings, nursing a cup of strong tea, stood by the window, his thoughts replaying the events of the night. The cryptic note, the crimson ribbon, and Lydia's claim that Eleanor had vanished from her room. 100 at precisely 10:17 a.m., the crunch of gravel announced the arrival of a motorcar. Hastings glanced out to see a familiar figure alight. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his tailored suit, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the dusty drive. His moustache, meticulously waxed, framed a calm, appraising expression as he surveyed the manor. Beside him, carrying a small valise, was his valet, who promptly retreated to the car after handing Poirot his walking stick. Hastings hurried to the entrance hall, where Sir Reginald Vane greeted Poirot with a mixture of relief and impatience. "Monsieur Poirot, thank heavens you're here," Sir Reginald said, his voice strained. "This business with my daughter, it's unthinkable. The police are on their way, but I trust your methods." Poirot inclined his head, his green eyes sharp. "Merci, Sir Reginald. I am, as always, at the service of truth. But first, I must understand. Captain Hastings, mon ami, you have observed much, oui? Tell me all." As they walked to the library, Hastings recounted the previous night's events in precise detail. The crimson pouch, the note about the Vermilion Vow, the scream, the library encounter with Eleanor, and the discovery of her ring in Lydia's room. He described the timeline. Eleanor in the library at 12:07 a.m., the scream at 12:10, and the ring found by 12:15. Poirot listened.
Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. The little details, they speak.
Now, let us meet the dramatis personae of this tragedy. In the drawing room, the guests were assembled, their postures stiff with unease. Lady Beatrice Vane sat ramrod straight, her lips pursed. Lawrence Whitmore paced by the hearth, his eyes red-rimmed. Mrs. Clara Whitmore clutched a handkerchief, her gaze fixed on her son. Dr. Julian Carver stood calmly, his medical bag at his side, while Victor Langston leaned against a bookcase, his joviality replaced by a grim frown. Lydia Gray, pale and withdrawn, sat in a corner, her hands twisting in her lap. Poirot entered with a flourish, his presence commanding instant attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice smooth as velvet. "I am Hercule Poirot, and I am here to unravel the mystery of Mademoiselle Eleanor's disappearance. I ask for your patience and your candor. The truth, it hides in the shadows, but it cannot escape the little grey cells." He began his inquiries with characteristic precision, addressing each guest in turn. To Sir Reginald, he asked about Eleanor's state of mind. "She was radiant," Sir Reginald insisted, "but perhaps preoccupied. This engagement was her choice, though I had my doubts about Whitmore's prospects." Lawrence bristled, but said nothing. Poirot turned to him next. "Monsieur Whitmore, you were the last to see Mademoiselle Eleanor before she retired. At what time was this?" 11:30, perhaps, Lawrence replied, his voice tight. "We spoke in the hall. She seemed nervous. But she kissed me goodnight. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Nervous, you say? And yet, she did not confide the cause. Lawrence shook his head, his jaw clenched. Poirot moved to Lydia Gray, whose account of Eleanor's visit to her room at midnight intrigued him. She came to talk, Lydia said softly. She was upset. Said something about a promise she couldn't keep. Then she left, or I thought she did. I turned to blow out the candle, and when I looked back, she was gone. And the window? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. It was open, Lydia admitted. But I swear, I heard no footsteps, no sound of her leaving. Poirot's questions continued, probing alibis and relationships. Lady Beatrice admitted to disliking Lawrence, citing his lack of breeding. Mrs. Whitmore defended her son fiercely, while Dr. Carver claimed to have been in his room, reading, at the time of the scream. Victor
Struggle, he murmured. And yet the ring remains. Why? He turned to Hastings, his voice low. Mon ami, the timeline. It is impossible. Mademoiselle Eleanor cannot be in two places at once. Your library at 12:07. Mademoiselle Gray's room at 12:10. Someone lies, or something is not as it seems. As the police arrived, led by a gruff Inspector Grayson, Poirot stepped back, allowing them to conduct their search. But Hastings knew his friend was already piecing together the puzzle. The crimson ribbon, the ring, the vow, each was a thread in a tapestry only Poirot could weave. As the detective retreated to the library to reflect, Hastings felt a familiar thrill. The game was afoot, and Hercule Poirot was in his element. Chapter 4. The Threads of Suspicion. The morning at Ashbourne Hall unfolded with a tense hush, the grandeur of its oak-panelled corridors overshadowed by the weight of Eleanor Vane's disappearance. The police, under Inspector Grayson's brusque command, scoured the grounds and questioned the servants, but their efforts yielded little beyond murmured speculations. Hercule Poirot, however, preferred the quiet of the library, where he sat in a high-backed chair, his fingers tracing the edge of a leather-bound volume, his eyes half-closed in thought. Captain Hastings, ever eager to assist, stood nearby, watching his friend's methodical mind at work. Mon ami, Poirot said at last, his voice soft but precise. The disappearance of Mademoiselle Eleanor is not a mere accident. It is a performance, a drama staged with care. But the script, it is incomplete. We must find the missing lines. Hastings nodded, though he felt a touch adrift. The note about the vermilion vow, the ribbon, the ring, it's all so cryptic, Poirot. Where do we begin? Poirot's moustache twitched. We begin, Hastings, with the people. The heart of every crime lies in the human soul, its desires, its fears, its secrets. Let us question them again, but this time we shall listen, not only to their words, but to what they do not say. They returned to the drawing room, where the guests had reconvened, their faces a gallery of unease. Sir Reginald stood by the fireplace, his stern demeanour fraying at the edges. Lady Beatrice, her sharp eyes darting, adjusted her shawl with deliberate precision. Lawrence Whitmore sat rigidly, his hands clasped, while his mother, Mrs. Clara Whitmore, hovered protectively. Dr. Julian Carver leaned against the wall, his calm facade unshaken, and Victor Langston paced. Vow, and now it's coming undone. I pressed her, but she wouldn't explain. Then she left,
Or I thought she did. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A vow, you say? Most interesting. And the time, can you be precise? Lydia hesitated. It was just before midnight. I glanced at the clock when she entered, 11:55, perhaps. Hastings caught Poirot's glance. The timeline was tightening. Eleanor in Lydia's room at 11:55, then with Hastings in the library at 12:07. 12 minutes, yet the manor's layout made such swift movement plausible. But the scream at 12:10 and the ring left behind muddied the waters. Poirot turned to Lawrence. Monsieur Whitmore, you kissed Mademoiselle Eleanor good night at 11:30. Did she mention this vow, or anything unusual? Lawrence's jaw tightened. She was quiet, distracted. I thought it was nerves, wedding plans, you know. She mentioned needing to speak to Lydia, but nothing about a vow. Poirot nodded, then addressed Dr. Carver. Doctor, as the family physician, you know Mademoiselle Eleanor well. Was she prone to such distress? Carver's response was measured. Eleanor is spirited but sensible. If she was distressed, it was likely due to some external pressure. I was in my room by 11 o'clock, reading. I heard nothing until the scream. Poirot's gaze shifted to Victor Langston, whose pacing had ceased. Monsieur Langston, you were on the terrace, smoking a cigar, oui? At what time did you return indoors? Langston flushed. Around 11:45, I suppose. I saw no one, heard nothing. The night was quiet. Yet, Poirot pressed, the terrace overlooks the garden below Mademoiselle Gray's window. You saw no movement, no shadow? Langston shook his head, too quickly, Hastings thought. Poirot's expression remained inscrutable as he turned to Lady Beatrice. Madame, you disapproved of this engagement. Did Mademoiselle Eleanor confide any doubts to you? Lady Beatrice's lips thinned. Eleanor knew my views. Whitmore's lack of standing was unsuitable, but she was stubborn. If she had doubts, she kept them from me. Mrs. Clara Whitmore bristled, but Poirot raised a hand, forestalling her retort. And you, Madame Whitmore? As the mother of the groom, you must have observed Mademoiselle Eleanor closely. Clara's voice was sharp. Eleanor loved my Lawrence. If she was troubled, it was her father's doing, always pressuring her.
Private word with Hastings. In the library, he produced a small notebook, sketching a rough map of the manor's second floor. Observe, Hastings, he said, marking the positions of Lydia's room, the library, and the terrace. The distances are not great, but the timing, it is tight. And this ribbon, this vermilion vow, it is the key. Why was it in the box? Why did Mademoiselle Eleanor guard it so fiercely? Hastings frowned. Could it be a love token? Something tied to Lawrence? Perhaps, Poirot mused. But a vow suggests obligation, not merely affection. We must learn more of Mademoiselle Eleanor's secrets. Their conversation was interrupted by Inspector Grayson, who entered with a grave expression. Monsieur Poirot, we've found something in the garden. A woman's shawl, silk, caught in the rose bushes below Miss Gray's window. It's Eleanor's. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Show me. In the garden, the shawl lay tangled among thorns, its pale blue fabric unmistakable. Poirot examined it, noting a small tear and a faint smudge of dirt. No blood, no signs of violence, he murmured. Yet it is here, and the ring is there. The pieces, they do not yet fit. As they returned to the manor, Hastings felt the weight of Poirot's words. The shawl, the ribbon, the ring, each was a thread in a tapestry of deception. Someone in Ashburn Hall knew more than they admitted, and Poirot's little grey cells were already tracing the pattern. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The afternoon light filtered through the heavy drapes of Ashburn Hall, casting long shadows across the drawing room where the guests had reconvened. The discovery of Eleanor Vane's shawl in the garden had sent a ripple of unease through the household, and Inspector Grayson's men were now combing the estate with renewed vigour. Yet, to Captain Hastings, the police's effort seemed a blunt instrument, compared to the scalpel-like precision of Hercule Poirot's mind. The little Belgian detective stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes scanning the assembled company with an air of quiet authority. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "The disappearance of Mademoiselle Eleanor is no simple matter. The shawl, the ring, the ribbon. These are not mere objects, but signposts to the truth. But first we must clear the fog of deception. Someone here knows more than they have revealed." A collective tension gripped the room. Lawrence Whitmore, his face pale, rose to his feet. "Monsieur Poirot, are you accusing one of us? Eleanor's gone. Surely we should be searching, not pointing fingers." Poirot raised a placating hand. "Patience, Monsieur Whitmore. The search, it continues, but the mind must also work. Let us consider the facts and the distractions."
One of the gardeners saw a man lurking near the gate last night, around 11 p.m. A stranger, rough-looking, carrying a sack. Could be a kidnapper. The room erupted in gasps. Mrs. Clara Whitmore clutched her son's arm, whispering, "I knew it. Some villain has taken her." Lady Beatrice's eyes narrowed, while Victor Langston muttered about vagrants. Even Sir Reginald seemed swayed, his stern features softening with hope. Poirot, however, remained unmoved. "A stranger, you say? Most convenient. And yet, Inspector, this man was not seen by Monsieur Langston on the terrace, nor by any servant. The gates are locked at night, are they not?" Grayson hesitated. "Well, yes, but a determined fellow could climb them." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone sceptical, "but let us not chase shadows. Hastings, mon ami, what do you make of this gardener's tale?" Hastings, caught off guard, straightened. "It seems too neat, Poirot. A stranger at exactly the right time. It feels like a diversion." "Précisément." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A red herring, designed to mislead." But Hercule Poirot is not so easily swayed. "Let us return to the night of the disappearance. Mademoiselle Gray, you say Mademoiselle Eleanor left your room. Did you lock the door behind her?" Lydia Gray, her auburn hair catching the light, shook her head. "No, Monsieur Poirot. I was shaken. After her talk of a vow, I didn't think to lock it." Poirot nodded, then turned to Sir Reginald. "Monsieur, you mentioned reviewing accounts in your study. Did you hear the scream at 12:10 a.m.? Sir Reginald frowned. "I was deep in my ledgers. I heard nothing until the commotion afterward." "And yet," Poirot pressed, "your study is but 2 doors from Mademoiselle Gray's room." "Curious, non?" Sir Reginald's face reddened, but he said nothing. Poirot's gaze swept to Dr. Julian Carver, who had remained silent. "Doctor, you were reading in your room. Did you perhaps hear footsteps, a door, anything unusual?" Carver's calm demeanor held firm. "Nothing, Monsieur Poirot. My room is on the west wing, farther from Miss Gray's. I was absorbed in a medical journal." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign Hastings recognized as suspicion. The detective then addressed Victor Langston. "Monsieur, Your cigar on the terrace. How long did it take you to smoke it? Langston shifted uncomfortably. 10 minutes, perhaps 15. I was back inside by midnight, I swear. Yet, Poirot said softly, the terrace is directly below Mademoiselle Grey's window.
Her son. The gardener's tale of a stranger felt like a convenient distraction. But from what? Poirot stepped to the center of the room, producing the mother-of-pearl box from the library, which he had retrieved earlier. He opened it, revealing the crimson ribbon, its frayed ends stark against the velvet lining. "This ribbon," he said, holding it aloft, "is the vermilion vow of the note, I believe. But what vow? A promise of love? A debt? A secret?" Lydia gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Poirot's eyes locked onto her. "Mademoiselle Grey, you recognize this ribbon, oui?" Lydia hesitated, then nodded. "Eleanor wore it sometimes, in her hair. She called it her lucky charm, but I don't know why she kept it in that box." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was clearly racing. He turned to the group. "I propose a small experiment. Let us reconstruct the night's events. Mademoiselle Grey, you will return to your room. Monsieur Whitmore, you will stand in the hall where you parted with Mademoiselle Eleanor. Monsieur Langston, to the terrace. The rest remain here. Hastings, you will accompany me." The group complied, though reluctance hung in the air. As they dispersed, Poirot whispered to Hastings, "Observe, mon ami. The truth lies in their movements, their hesitations. The red herring of the stranger, it is a clumsy attempt to divert us. But from whom?" In Lydia's room, Poirot paced the floor, noting the distance from the bed to the window, 10 feet, easily crossed in seconds. He examined the candle wax on the rug, now hardened, and the window's latch, which showed no signs of tampering. "No forced entry," he murmured. "Mademoiselle Eleanor left willingly, or was taken by someone she trusted." Outside, Langston stood on the terrace, his cigar unlit, his posture tense. Lawrence lingered in the hall, his eyes fixed on the floor. Poirot, watching from the window, said nothing, but Hastings knew his friend was building a mental map of motives and opportunities. The shawl, the ring, the ribbon. Each pointed to a truth just out of reach. As they returned to the drawing room, Inspector Grayson burst in, his face grim. "Monsieur Poirot, we found a footprint in the garden, near the shawl. A man's boot, size 10. It doesn't match any of the household." The guests stirred, hope flickering, but Poirot's expression remained skeptical. "A footprint," he said, "is easily made. The truth, it is not so simple. We shall see, Inspector. We shall see." Hastings felt a chill. The stranger's shadow loomed large. But Poirot's focus was elsewhere, on the guests. Their boots trampling the manicured lawns, while whispers of the mysterious footprint and the stranger seen by the gardener fueled speculation among the guests. Yet Hercule Poirot, ensconced in the library with Captain Hastings, seemed impervious to the clamor, his attention fixed on a small, seemingly trivial detail: the crimson ribbon from the mother-of-pearl box. "Mon ami," Poirot said, holding the ribbon delicately between his gloved fingers, "this is no mere ornament. It is a symbol, a clue that speaks of intention. The frayed ends, the careful knot, someone meant for it to be seen, to be remembered. But why?" Hastings, seated across from him, frowned. "It's just a ribbon, Poirot." "Eleanor wore it in her hair," Lydia said. "Perhaps it's sentimental, nothing more." Poirot's eyes twinkled with gentle reproach. "Sentimental, perhaps, but nothing is just anything in a case such as this. The ribbon was hidden in a locked box,
guarded by Mademoiselle Eleanor. And the note in your crimson pouch, Hastings, the vermilion vow will vanish by midnight. It points to this ribbon. We must discover its meaning." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock. A maid, her face pale, entered with a folded piece of paper. "Monsieur Poirot, this was found in Miss Eleanor's room, tucked inside her writing desk." Poirot took the paper, his movements deliberate. It was a letter, written in Eleanor's elegant hand, dated 2 days prior. "My dearest Lydia, there are things I cannot say, not yet. The vow I made binds me, but it is a chain I fear I cannot bear. If anything should happen, look to the rose garden at dawn. Forgive me." Eleanor Poirot's mustache twitched as he handed the letter to Hastings. "The rose garden, mon ami, and a vow that burdens her. This is no coincidence." Hastings read the letter, his pulse quickening. "The shawl was found in the rose garden, Poirot. Could she have left it there deliberately?" "Perhaps," Poirot mused, rising. "Let us visit this garden. The little details, they call to us. The rose garden, a fragrant enclave bordered by ancient yews, lay bathed in the soft light of late afternoon. The police had cordoned off the area where the shawl was found, but Poirot's interest lay elsewhere. He knelt by a bed of crimson roses, his eyes scanning the soil. Hastings watched, puzzled, as Poirot's fingers brushed against a small, displaced stone, half buried beneath a rose bush. With a gentle tug he unearthed it, revealing a tiny scrap of fabric caught in its rough edge, a thread, crimson, identical to the ribbon. "Voilà," Poirot said softly, holding the thread to the light. "The ribbon was here, or one like it, but what the timing? It is symbolic, perhaps. We must consider the context." They returned to the manor, where Poirot requested a private audience with Lydia Gray. She met them in the library, her auburn hair loose, her eyes shadowed with fatigue. Poirot presented the letter, watching her reaction closely. "Lydia," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "this letter speaks of a vow, a burden. You were Mademoiselle Eleanor's confidant. What did she fear?" Lydia's hands trembled as she read the letter. I don't know, Monsieur Poirot. She was troubled, yes, but she wouldn't tell me everything. She mentioned a promise, something from years ago, tied to her family. She said it was sealed in crimson." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Sealed in crimson. And this ribbon, did you ever see her with it, outside of her hair?" Lydia hesitated, then nodded. "Once, last month. She was holding it, staring at it, as if it reminded her of something painful. I thought it was just a keepsake." Poirot thanked her and dismissed her gently, but his expression told Hastings he was far from satisfied. "The ribbon, the vow, the rose garden," Poirot murmured. "They are connected, but the thread is tangled. We must unravel it carefully." Later, as the guests gathered for a strained dinner, Poirot observed them with renewed intensity. Sir Reginald's stern silence, Lady Beatrice's sharp glances, Lawrence's anxious fidgeting, each betrayed a hidden tension. Dr. Carver, however, intrigued Poirot most. The physician's calm was almost too perfect, his responses too measured. When Poirot casually mentioned the rose garden, Carver's fork paused mid-air, a flicker of unease crossing his face before he resumed eating. After dinner, Poirot drew Hastings aside. "Mon ami, I have a task for you. Tomorrow, watch Dr. Carver closely. His calm, it is a mask. And the ribbon, ask the servants if they have seen it before, perhaps in an unusual context." Hastings nodded, though he felt the puzzle growing more complex. "And the footprint, Poirot? The stranger?" Poirot waved a dismissive hand. "A distraction, Hastings. The truth lies within these walls. in the hearts of those who know Mademoiselle Eleanor best. The ribbon is our guide. It is the vermilion vow, and it will lead us to her fate. As the evening drew to a close, Hastings retired to his room, the letter's words echoing in his mind. Look to the rose garden at dawn. The crimson thread, the shawl, the ring, each was a piece of a mosaic, and Poirot was slowly assembling it. But the picture remained elusive, and Hastings knew the next clue could shift everything. Chapter 7. More Lies Surface. The third day at Ashbourne Hall dawned with
Dogged persistence continued to chase the phantom of the mysterious stranger. Captain Hastings, tasked with observing Dr. Julian Carver and querying the servants about the crimson ribbon, felt the weight of the mystery pressing ever heavier. The letter found in Eleanor's desk, its cryptic reference to a vow and the rose garden, gnawed at him, as did Poirot's conviction that the truth lay within the manor's closed circle. Poirot, as was his custom, began the day in the library, his small notebook open, his pencil sketching a timeline of the fateful night. "Hastings, mon ami," he said, his voice low. "The ribbon, the shawl, the ring, they are pieces of a puzzle, but the picture is obscured by lies. Today we shall stir the waters and see what rises." Hastings nodded, though he felt a touch out of his depth. "I spoke to the maids, Poirot. One, a girl named Annie, said she saw Miss Eleanor with the crimson ribbon last week, not in her hair, but tied around a bundle of letters she was burning in the garden. Annie thought it odd, but didn't question her." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Letters, you say? Burned? This is most significant. The ribbon, it was not merely decorative, it bound something secret. We must learn what those letters contained." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion in the hall. Raised voices drew them to the drawing room, where Lawrence Whitmore stood, his face flushed, confronting Victor Langston. "You had no right to speak to her that way," Lawrence shouted, his fists clenched. "Eleanor trusted you, and now she's gone." Langston, his usual bluster subdued, raised his hands defensively. "I only asked her about the business, Whitmore. She was upset, yes, but I didn't threaten her." Poirot stepped forward, his presence calming the room like a conductor silencing an orchestra. "Messieurs, please, what is this about a conversation with Mademoiselle Eleanor?" Lawrence hesitated, his anger giving way to unease. "It was the day before the party. I overheard Langston in the study with Eleanor, pressing her about some deal with her father's company. She sounded frightened." Langston's face reddened. "It was business, nothing more. Sir Reginald's shipping firm has been struggling. I suggested a merger with my company, but Eleanor was resistant. Said it would betray a promise she'd made." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A promise, Monsieur Langston? Did she say, to whom?" Langston shook his head. "No, she clammed up. I left it at that." Poirot turned to Sir Reginald, who had entered during the exchange, his stern face clouded. "Monsieur, this merger, did Mademoiselle Eleanor oppose it strongly?" Sir Reginald's jaw tightened. "She was sentimental about the company, said it was her mother's legacy. I told her we had no choice, debts were mounting, but she wouldn't listen." The room fell silent, the revelation hanging heavy. Hastings caught Poirot's glance, sensing his friend's mind at work. A vow, a promise, a burned bundle of letters, each pointed to a secret Eleanor had guarded fiercely. Poirot shifted his attention to Dr. Carver, who had been watching the scene with his usual calm. "Doctor, you knew Mademoiselle Eleanor well. Did she ever speak of these business matters, or of a promise that troubled her?" Carver's eyes met Poirot's, unflinching. "She confided in me as her physician, not about business. Her health was good, but she was under strain. Family expectations, the engagement. I prescribed a mild sedative a week ago." Poirot nodded, but Hastings, observing as instructed, noted a slight tightening in Carver's posture, a fleeting glance toward the window. The doctor's composure was a fortress,
but Poirot's questions were chiseling at its walls. As the guests dispersed, Poirot drew Hastings aside. "Mon ami, the lies multiply. Langston's conversation, Sir Reginald's debts, Eleanor's burned letters, these are not separate threads but part of the same tapestry. And Dr. Carver, he knows more than he admits. His calm, it is too perfect." Hastings frowned. "But what about the footprint, the stranger? Could they be connected to the business deal?" Poirot waved a dismissive hand. "The footprint is a distraction, Hastings. The stranger, if he exists, is a pawn. The heart of this lies within the family, within the manor. We must press further." That afternoon, Poirot requested a tour of Eleanor's room, accompanied by Hastings and Lydia Gray. The room was tidy, its contents meticulously catalogued by the police, but Poirot's eyes sought the small details. He examined Eleanor's writing desk, where the letter to Lydia had been found, and noticed a faint scratch on the wood near the inkwell. With a delicate touch, he pried open a hidden compartment, revealing a single sheet of paper, a receipt, dated a month prior, for a safe deposit box in a London bank, signed by Eleanor and witnessed by Dr. Carver. "Voilà," Poirot said, holding the receipt aloft. "Another secret. Mademoiselle Eleanor kept something of value, something she did not trust to this house. And Dr. Carver, he was her confidant in this." Lydia's eyes widened. "She never told me about a safe deposit box. What could it be?" Poirot's expression was unreadable. "That, mademoiselle, is what we must discover. But first, we must confront the good doctor." As evening approached, the tension in Ashburn Hall was palpable. The guests' alibis were fraying, their motives surfacing like cracks in a dam. Eleanor's vow, tied to a crimson ribbon and a burned past, was no longer a mere mystery. It was a chain linking the suspects, and Poirot was tightening its links. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turn.
Whisper secrets. The discovery of the safe deposit box receipt in Eleanor Vane's desk had cast a new light on the mystery, and Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the truth, sensed the moment was ripe for a breakthrough. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, felt the weight of the mounting clues, the crimson ribbon, the shawl, the ring, and now the receipt, each a fragment of a truth that seemed tantalizingly close, yet maddeningly elusive. In the late afternoon, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing room, the heavy velvet curtains drawn against the fading light, casting the room in a somber glow. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax and old books, but the elegance of the setting did little to ease the tension. Sir Reginald stood by the hearth, his face a mask of controlled fury. Lady Beatrice sat rigidly, her fingers drumming on the arm of her chair. Lawrence Whitmore, his eyes hollow, clutched a glass of brandy, while his mother, Mrs. Clara Whitmore, hovered protectively. Dr. Julian Carver maintained his calm facade, though Hastings noted a faint sheen of perspiration on his brow. Victor Langston slumped in a corner, his bravado eroded, and Lydia Gray, pale and trembling, seemed on the verge of collapse. Poirot stood at the centre, his small frame commanding the room's attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice steady and precise. "The disappearance of Mademoiselle Eleanor is a puzzle of many pieces, but one piece now shines brightly. A receipt hidden in her desk for a safe deposit box in London, witnessed by Dr. Carver. This suggests a secret she guarded with care. Doctor, perhaps you can enlighten us." Carver's composure flickered, his eyes darting to the floor before meeting Poirot's gaze. "It was a private matter, Monsieur Poirot. Eleanor asked me to witness her signature for the bank. She didn't disclose the contents, and I didn't ask. As her physician, I respected her confidence."
Poirot's moustache twitched. Most commendable, Doctor. But a secret so closely guarded, it suggests something of great value. Or great danger. Did she seem distressed when she asked for your signature? Carver hesitated. A crack in his armor. She was anxious. She mentioned needing to protect something. But she wouldn't say what. The room stirred. Whispers rippling among the guests. Lydia Gray's teacup clattered in its saucer, and she stood abruptly, her voice breaking. "Stop it, all of you! Eleanor was my friend, and you're tearing her apart with your questions. She was scared, yes, but she didn't tell me everything. She said the vow was her
End in the roses, a phrase that echoes her letter. You have carried a heavy weight. Merci for your candor." Lawrence Whitmore slammed his glass down, his face flushed. "Enough, Poirot. Lydia's upset, and you're hounding her. If Eleanor was hiding something, it was because of her father's pressure, his debts, his demands about the company. Tell them, Sir Reginald." Sir Reginald's face darkened. "Mind your tongue, Whitmore. My daughter knew her duty to the family. If she hid something, it was her own doing, not mine." Lady Beatrice's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "Duty? You pushed her into this engagement, Reginald, and now look what's happened. If you'd listened to me, she'd never have been entangled with—" She stopped, glancing at Lawrence, but the accusation hung in the air. Mrs. Whitmore rose, her voice trembling with indignation. "How dare you, Beatrice? My Lawrence loved Eleanor. If anyone drove her to this, it was your meddling, always whispering poison in her ear." The room erupted into chaos, accusations flying like sparks. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. The truth will not be found in shouting. Each of you has a motive, a secret, and I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover them all. But for now, let us consider this vow, this burden Mademoiselle Eleanor carried. It is tied to the crimson ribbon, to the rose garden, to the safe deposit box. Someone here knows its meaning." Lydia's sobs quieted, but her words lingered in Hastings' mind. "End in the roses." He glanced at Poirot, who was watching the guests with the intensity of a hawk. The detective's gaze settled on Dr. Carver, whose fingers twitched slightly, betraying a nervous energy beneath his calm exterior. As the guests dispersed, Poirot drew Hastings aside in the corridor. "Mon ami, Lydia's outburst, it is the crack in the dam. She knows more than she realizes, and her words point us to the rose garden once again. But Dr. Carver, he is the key. His signature on the receipt, his knowledge of Eleanor's anxiety. He is closer to this vow than he admits." Hastings nodded. "What's our next step, Poirot?" "We must visit this bank in London," Poirot replied, his voice low. "The safe deposit box holds the secret of the Vermilion Vow. But first, we shall set a small trap. Tomorrow we gather the guests again, and I shall apply a little pressure. The truth, it is like a rose. It blooms under the right conditions." As night fell, Hastings retired to his room, the echoes of Lydia's breakdown and the guests' accusations swirling in his thoughts. The crimson ribbon, the safe deposit box, the roses, each was a thread in a web of deception. And Poirot— Chapter 9. The Trap. The fourth day at Ashbourne Hall dawned with a restless energy. The manor's grandeur, now a stifling cage for its inhabitants. The police, still chasing the elusive stranger and his footprint, had made little progress, while the guests' nerves frayed under the strain of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, remained a beacon of calm, his meticulous mind weaving together the threads of the mystery. The crimson ribbon, the shawl in the rose garden,
the engagement ring, and the safe deposit box receipt. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, sensed that Poirot was preparing to tighten the net around the truth. In the library, Poirot stood before a small table, the mother-of-pearl box open, its crimson ribbon laid out like a relic. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, "today we shall set a trap. The Vermilion Vow is the heart of this affair, and someone in this house knows its secret. We must provoke a reaction, a slip, to reveal it." Hastings frowned, intrigued but cautious. "A trap, Poirot? How do you plan to do that?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "By suggesting that the truth is within our grasp. Fear, Hastings. It loosens tongues and betrays the guilty. We shall gather the guests and apply a little pressure, oui?" At Poirot's request, the household assembled in the drawing room at precisely 3 p.m. The air was thick with tension, the ticking of the mantel clock a relentless reminder of time slipping away. Sir Reginald stood by the window, his face etched with worry. Lady Beatrice sat with her usual hauteur, though her fingers betrayed a nervous twitch. Lawrence Whitmore, pale and disheveled, avoided eye contact, while his mother, Mrs. Clara Whitmore, glared at anyone who approached him. Dr. Julian Carver maintained his composed demeanor, though Hastings noted a slight tightening of his jaw. Victor Langston, his joviality long gone, fidgeted with his cufflinks, and Lydia Gray, still shaken from her outburst, sat with her hands clasped tightly. Poirot began, his voice smooth and deliberate. "Mesdames et messieurs, the disappearance of Mademoiselle Eleanor is a tapestry of secrets, and we are close to unraveling it. The crimson ribbon, the shawl, the ring, the safe deposit box, they point to a vow, a promise that bound her to someone in this room. I have arranged for the bank in London to open the safe deposit box tomorrow morning. Its contents, I believe, will reveal the truth." A ripple of unease passed through the group. Dr. Carver's hand paused mid-gesture, his eyes narrowing. Langston coughed, shifting in his seat, while Lydia's breath caught audibly. Sir Reginald's face darkened, and he stepped forward. "Perhaps someone here knows what she hid." Lawrence sprang to his feet, his voice trembling. "This is absurd! Eleanor loved me. She wouldn't keep secrets. If there's a vow, it's her father's fault, pushing her into that merger with Langston." Langston bristled. "Watch your accusations, Whitmore. I only wanted to help the vain business. Eleanor was stubborn, yes, but I didn't force her." Lady Beatrice's voice cut in, sharp and cold. "Enough bickering. If Eleanor hid something, it was to protect the family name, something you, Lawrence, could never understand." Mrs. Whitmore's eyes flashed. "How dare you, Beatrice? My son is worth 10 of your precious lineage." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. "Please, let us not lose focus. The safe deposit box will speak, but there is another clue we must consider." He produced the crimson ribbon, holding it aloft. "This ribbon, found in the rose garden, and in Mademoiselle Eleanor's box, is no mere trinket. It is a symbol of her vow. Who among you knows its origin?" The room fell silent, but Hastings noticed subtle reactions. Lydia's eyes widened, Carver's fingers twitched, and Langston's face paled. Then, unexpectedly, Dr. Carver spoke, his voice steady but strained. "Monsieur Poirot, I must clarify something. Eleanor asked me to witness the safe deposit box agreement because she trusted me. The ribbon? I saw her with it once, years ago, during a conversation about her mother. She said it was a keepsake from a promise made long before Poirot's eyes locked onto Carver's. A promise to her mother, you say? And yet you did not mention this before. Why? Carver hesitated, his calm cracking. It slipped my mind. It was a private moment, not relevant to her disappearance. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of disbelief. Nothing, Doctor, is irrelevant in a case such as this. The ribbon, the vow, the roses, they are connected. And you, I think, know more than you admit. Before Carver could respond, Lydia stood, her voice quavering but resolute. Monsieur Poirot, I can't stay silent any longer. Eleanor told me the ribbon was from a promise she made to her mother before she died, a vow to protect something precious. She wouldn't tell me what, but she said it was why she couldn't agree to the merger. It was tearing her apart. The room froze. Lydia's words a spark in a powder keg. Sir Reginald's face drained of color, and he gripped the mantel for support. Her mother, he whispered. What nonsense is this? Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was clearly racing. Merci, Mademoiselle Gray. Carver. He is nervous. Tonight we must watch. Someone will act, and the truth will begin to emerge. As the group dispersed, Hastings felt the tension coiling tighter. The ribbon, the vow, the safe deposit box, they were converging, and Poirot's trap was closing. But who would be caught in its jaws? Chapter 10. The Reveal. The evening at Ashburn Hall was cloaked in a stillness that belied the storm of secrets brewing within its walls. The guests, shaken by Poirot's announcement about the safe deposit box and Lydia Gray's revelation of Eleanor's vow to her mother, moved through the manor like actors in a play nearing its climax. Hercule Poirot, ever the maestro, had set his trap, and now, as the clock neared 9 p.m., he prepared to unveil the truth. Captain Hastings, his loyal confidant, stood by the library's fireplace, his heart pounding with anticipation. The crimson ribbon, the shawl, the ring, the safe deposit box, all were threads in a tapestry Poirot was ready to reveal. Poirot had summoned the household to the drawing room, its heavy chandelier casting a golden glow over the tense assembly. Sir Reginald Vane stood rigid, his hands clasped behind his back. Lady Beatrice's sharp eyes darted between the guests, her lips a thin line. Lawrence Whitmore sat slumped, his face haggard, while Mrs. Clara Whitmore gripped his arm protectively. Dr. Julian Carver maintained his calm exterior, though his fingers betrayed a slight tremor. Victor Langston, his bravado extinguished, leaned against the wall, and Lydia Gray, pale but resolute, clutched a handkerchief. Inspector Grayson, skeptical but curious, stood by the door, his notebook at the ready. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding. The disappearance of Mademoiselle Eleanor Vane is no longer a mystery. It is a drama, carefully staged, and tonight I, Hercule Poirot, shall reveal its plot. The truth lies in the Vermilion Vow, a promise that bound Mademoiselle Eleanor to a secret that led to her vanishing. He paced slowly, his eyes sweeping the room. Let us reconstruct the night of the disappearance, step by step, using the little gray cells. At 11:30 p.m., Monsieur Whitmore bids Mademoiselle Eleanor good night in the hall. She is nervous, distracted. At 11:55, she visits Mademoiselle Gray, speaking of a vow she cannot keep. At 12:07, Captain Hastings sees her in the library, clutching a mother-of-pearl box containing a crimson ribbon. At 12:10, a scream is heard from Mademoiselle Gray's room, and the engagement ring is found, but Eleanor is gone. A shawl is later discovered in the rose garden.
Mademoiselle Gray. It was a keepsake from her mother.
a promise to protect something precious. But what? The answer lies in the safe deposit box, which I have not yet opened, but I do not need to. The truth is here, in this room. Sir Reginald's voice was hoarse. "Get to the point, Poirot. Where is my daughter?" Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. "Patience, monsieur. Let us consider the timeline. The scream at 12:10, the ring on the floor, the open window. These suggest Mademoiselle Eleanor fled or was taken. But the shawl in the rose garden, the undisturbed flower beds, the absence of marks on the window, they tell a different story. She did not leave through the window. She was never in Mademoiselle Gray's room at midnight." Lydia gasped. "But I saw her, Monsieur Poirot. She was there." Poirot shook his head. "No, mademoiselle. You saw someone, or you believed you did. The scream, the ring, the open window, they were a performance, a distraction. Mademoiselle Eleanor was in the library at 12:07, as Captain Hastings confirms. She could not cross the manor in 3 minutes, speak with you, and vanish. Someone else screamed. Someone else left the ring." The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words sinking in. He turned to Dr. Carver, whose calm was crumbling. "Doctor, you witnessed the safe deposit box agreement. You knew of Eleanor's anxiety, her vow. You saw the ribbon years ago, tied to her mother's memory. What was the vow?" Carver's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Poirot continued, undeterred. "The vow was to protect her mother's legacy, a collection of letters hidden in the safe deposit box that revealed a scandal involving the Vane family and a business partner." Victor Langston started, his face paling. "What are you implying, Poirot?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur Langston, your merger proposal threatened to expose these letters, which implicated you in a financial scheme with Eleanor's mother years ago. Eleanor discovered this, and her vow was to keep the letters hidden, to protect her family's name. But you pressured her, and she feared betrayal." Langston stammered, but Poirot turned to Lydia. "Mademoiselle Gray, you were her confidant. You helped her stage the disappearance, did you not? The scream, the ring, it was to make us believe she was taken, to divert attention from the true danger. The letters," Lydia's eyes filled with tears. I only wanted to help her. She was desperate, said the merger would ruin everything. We planned to make it look like she'd been taken so she could retrieve the letters from London and hide them forever." Poirot nodded. "And the ribbon in the rose garden, it was a signal, a marker for her escape. But someone else knew. Dr. Carver, you followed her to the library, didn't to protect her. She was going to destroy herself with those letters. I took her to a safe place, a clinic in Exeter. She's alive. I swear." The room erupted in gasps. Sir Reginald staggered, clutching the mantel. "Alive? Where is she?" Poirot raised a hand. "She is safe, monsieur. Thanks to Dr. Carver's misguided loyalty. But the Vermilion Vow, it was her undoing and her salvation. The letters, they will be retrieved, and the truth will be known." As Inspector Grayson moved to question Carver, Poirot stepped back, his work done. Hastings, awestruck, whispered, "You knew all along, didn't you?" Poirot smiled faintly. "The little gray cells, mon ami. They see what others miss." Chapter 11. The Reflection. The drawing room of Ashbourne Hall, once a stage for Poirot's dramatic revelation, now lay quiet, the echoes of truth settling like dust after a storm. The guests, reeling from the knowledge that Eleanor Vane was alive and hidden in an Exeter clinic, had dispersed to process the upheaval. Dr. Julian Carver, under Inspector Grayson's watchful eye, had been escorted to provide details of Eleanor's whereabouts, while the others grappled with the tangled web of motives and secrets that had unraveled. Captain Hastings, standing by the tall windows, gazed out at the rose garden, its crimson blooms glowing faintly in the twilight. The weight of the case lingered, and he knew Poirot's work was not yet complete. Hercule Poirot, impeccable as ever, sat in a high-backed chair in the library, his small hands folded neatly, his eyes half closed in contemplation. The mother-of-pearl box, its crimson ribbon now returned to its velvet lining, rested on the table before him. Hastings joined him, sensing the detective's need to reflect, as was his custom after a case's resolution. "Mon ami," Poirot said softly, his voice carrying the weight of introspection. "The affair of the Vermilion Vow is a reminder of the complexity of the human heart. Mademoiselle Eleanor sought to protect her mother's honor, yet in doing so, she wove a net of deception that nearly ensnared her forever." Hastings nodded, still piecing together the intricacies. "It was brilliant, Poirot, how you saw through the staged disappearance, the scream, the ring, the shawl, all to make us think she'd been taken. But why did Dr. Carver hide her? Was it really to protect her?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Dr. Carver, he is a man of loyalty, but also of fear. He knew of the letters in the safe deposit box, letters that revealed not only Monsieur Langston's financial misdeeds, but also a deeper scandal, an affair between Eleanor's mother and Langston, long before her marriage to Sir Reginald. Carver, as the family physician, was privy to this secret. When Eleanor threatened to expose the letters to block the merger,
Misguided, but not malicious, Hastings frowned. And Lydia? She helped Eleanor stage it all, didn't she? "Oui, Hastings," Poirot replied. "Mademoiselle Grey, out of love for her friend, agreed to the charade. The scream, the ring left on the floor, it was a performance to buy Eleanor time to reach London. The shawl in the rose garden was a misstep, meant to suggest a struggle, but placed too carelessly. The crimson thread, however, it was Eleanor's signal to Lydia, a marker of their plan." Hastings shook his head, marveling. "And the footprint, the stranger, pure fiction?" "Not entirely," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The gardener's tale was encouraged by Monsieur Langston, who hoped to divert suspicion. A clumsy red herring, but it served to muddy the waters. The truth, mon ami, lay in the contradictions, the impossible timeline, the ribbon's significance, the safe deposit box. These were the signposts to Eleanor's intent." A knock at the door interrupted them. Inspector Grayson entered, his face weary but relieved. "Monsieur Poirot, we've confirmed it. Miss Vane is at a private clinic in Exeter, safe and unharmed. She's agreed to return tomorrow, and the bank has been notified to secure the safe deposit box until we can retrieve its contents." Poirot inclined his head. "Merci, Inspector. You have done well to trust the little grey cells." Grayson hesitated, then added, "Doctor. Carver's cooperating, but he insists he acted to protect her. What do you make of it?" Poirot's expression softened. "He is a man caught between duty and fear. His actions were wrong, but his heart was not cruel. The law will decide his fate, but I suspect Mademoiselle Eleanor will speak in his favor." As Grayson departed, Hastings leaned forward. "Poirot, what happens now? The letters. Will they destroy the Vane family?" Poirot sighed, a rare glimpse of melancholy crossing his features. "The truth. It is a double-edged sword. The letters will reveal pain, Langston's betrayal, the mother's indiscretion. But they will also free Mademoiselle Eleanor from her vow. She sought to protect her mother's memory, but in doing so, she chained herself to silence. Now, she may find peace." Hastings nodded, struck by Poirot's insight.
You always see the human side, don't you? Not just the clues, but what drives people to act. Poirot smiled faintly. The little grey cells. They observe had nearly cost Eleanor her freedom. Poirot's genius had prevailed, as always, but it was his compassion, his understanding of the human condition, that left the deepest impression. As they stepped into the corridor, the manor's silence felt less oppressive, as if the truth had lifted a shadow from its walls. Chapter 12. The Return. The morning of the 5th day at Ashbourne Hall broke with a fragile clarity. The Devon sky streaked with clouds that mirrored the lingering unease within the manor. The news of Eleanor Vane's safety, confirmed by Inspector Grayson's report from the Exeter Clinic, had brought a tentative relief to the household, but the shadow of her staged disappearance and the secrets tied to the Vermilion Vow still loomed. Captain Hastings, standing by the breakfast room window, watched the gravel drive, awaiting the car that would bring Eleanor back. His thoughts churned with the revelations of the previous night. Dr. Carver's confession, Lydia's complicity, and the letters that threatened to unravel the Vane family's carefully guarded honor. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his morning attire, sipped a tisane at the breakfast table, his eyes bright with the quiet satisfaction of a puzzle nearly solved. "Mon ami," he said, glancing at Hastings, "today Mademoiselle Eleanor returns, and with her the final pieces of our mystery. But we must be vigilant. The truth, it is a delicate thing, and there may yet be surprises." Hastings nodded, his mind still grappling with the complexity of the case. "I can't believe Lydia helped her stage it all, Poirot. And Dr. Carver, hiding her in a clinic. Do you think Eleanor will confirm their stories?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "She will, Hastings, but her words will also reveal more. The Vermilion Vow. It bound her to silence, but now she must speak. The letters in the safe deposit box. They are the heart of this drama, and we must see them." At 10:23 a.m., the crunch of tires announced the arrival of a sleek black car. The guests, summoned by Poirot, gathered in the entrance hall, their faces a mix of anticipation and dread. Sir Reginald stood stiffly, his hands clasped tightly. Lady Beatrice's sharp gaze softened with rare vulnerability. Lawrence Whitmore, his eyes red-rimmed, hovered near his mother, Mrs. Clara Whitmore, whose protective demeanour had not wavered. Victor Langston lingered at the back, his face ashen, while Lydia Gray, pale but composed, clutched a shawl. Dr. Carver, under police supervision, stood apart, his expression unreadable. Eleanor Vane stepped from the car, her cream coat slightly rumpled, her face pale but resolute. Now Poirot, ever observant, stepped forward, his bow precise. "Mademoiselle Vane, I am Hercule Poirot. Your disappearance, it was a clever ruse, but it caused much pain. Will you now tell us the truth of the Vermilion Vow?" Eleanor's gaze met his, steady but haunted. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot, I owe everyone that much." The group moved to the drawing room, where Eleanor, seated beside Lydia, began her account. Her voice was soft but clear, each word measured. "The vow was to my mother, made before she died. She entrusted me with letters that proved Mr. Langston had manipulated her into a financial scheme years ago, one that nearly bankrupted our family. She made me promise to keep them hidden, to protect our name. The crimson ribbon was hers, a keepsake she tied around the letters." Langston shifted uncomfortably, but Poirot's raised hand silenced any protest. Eleanor continued, When Father proposed the merger with Mr. Langston's company, I knew those letters would come to light. If the deal went through, I couldn't let that happen. I planned to disappear, to retrieve the letters from the safe deposit box and destroy them. Lydia helped me stage it, the scream, the ring, the shawl, to make it seem I'd been taken. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. I only wanted to protect her, Monsieur Poirot. She was desperate. Eleanor squeezed her friend's hand. Dr. Carver found me in the library that night. He knew about the letters. He'd been Mother's confidant too. He insisted on taking me to the clinic, said it was safer than my plan to go to London alone. I was frightened, so I agreed. Poirot nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. And the ribbon in the rose garden, mademoiselle. The thread we found. A mistake, Eleanor admitted. I dropped it when I placed the shawl. It was meant to signal Lydia that I'd left, but I was careless. Sir Reginald's face was a storm of emotions. Relief, anger, betrayal. Eleanor, why didn't you tell me? I would have stopped the merger. Eleanor's voice trembled. I couldn't, Father. The letters, they also revealed Mother's affair with Mr. Langston. I couldn't bear to hurt you. The room gasped, Langston's face draining of colour. Lady Beatrice's hand flew to her mouth, and Lawrence stared, stunned. Poirot, however, remained calm. The truth. It is painful, but it is also freedom. Mademoiselle Eleanor, your vow was noble, but it led you to a dangerous path. Monsieur Langston, your silence on this matter, it was to protect yourself, oui? Langston stammered, I didn't know she had the letters. I only wanted the merger to save my business. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting, and yet you planted the story of the stranger to divert suspicion. A clumsy move, monsieur, as in never meant to hurt you. Lawrence's expression softened, and he took her hand. I know, Eleanor. We'll get through this. Poirot stepped back, his work nearly done. The Vermilion Vow. It is no longer a chain. The letters will be retrieved, and the truth will be faced, but for now, Mademoiselle Eleanor is safe, and that is what matters. As the guests dispersed, Hastings marveled at Poirot's ability to untangle such a web. The truth had been laid bare, but its repercussions would linger, a reminder of the delicate balance between loyalty and deception. Chapter 13. The Weight of Truth. The sun hung low over Ashbourne Hall, its golden rays filtering through the ancient yews, casting dappled shadows across the rose garden. The manor, though still grand, seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief with Eleanor Vane's return, yet the air remained thick with the aftershocks of her revelations. The crimson ribbon, the letters, the staged disappearance, all had been laid bare, but the emotional scars left by the Vermilion Vow lingered like an unresolved chord. Captain Hastings, standing on the terrace, felt the weight of the truth settling over the household, a truth that had both freed and wounded those within its walls. Hercule Poirot, ever meticulous, had retreated to the library to review his notes, his small frame dwarfed by the towering bookshelves, but his presence as commanding as ever. Hastings joined him, finding the detective poring over a sketch of the manor's second floor, the timeline of Eleanor's disappearance meticulously annotated. The mother-of-pearl box sat on the table, its crimson ribbon coiled within, a silent witness to the drama now nearing its close. Mon ami, Poirot said, looking up, his green eyes sharp. The case of Mademoiselle Eleanor is nearly complete, but the human heart, it is never so tidy as a puzzle. The truth, it has been revealed, but its consequences, they must now be faced. Hastings nodded, his thoughts still tangled in Eleanor's confession. It's hard to believe, Poirot. Her mother's affair with Langston, the letters, the vow. She went to such lengths to protect her family, only to nearly destroy it. Poirot's mustache twitched. a faint smile softening his features. "We, Hastings, the heart, it makes heroes and fools of us all." Mademoiselle Eleanor's vow was born of love, but it was sustained by fear. She sought to shield her father from pain, yet in doing so, she wove a deception that ensnared them all. The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock. Eleanor entered, her face pale but composed, her sapphire eyes reflecting a newfound resolve. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice steady, "I wanted to thank you. You've given me back the letters in the safe deposit box. They must be faced." Eleanor's gaze dropped to the ribbon on the table. "I'll go to London tomorrow with Inspector Grayson to retrieve them. They'll prove Mr. Langston's fraud, but they'll also hurt Father. I've asked Lydia to come with me. She's been my strength through this." Hastings glanced at Poirot, noting the detective's approving nod. "A wise choice, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "But what of Monsieur Whitmore? Your engagement, does it stand?" Eleanor's smile was bittersweet. "Lawrence has forgiven me, though I don't deserve it. We'll take things slowly, rebuild what was broken. He understands why I did it, even if it hurt him." Poirot's eyes softened. "The heart. It is resilient, mademoiselle. And what of Dr. Carver?" Eleanor hesitated, her fingers tightening. "He acted out of loyalty to Mother's memory, and to me. I've asked the police to be lenient. He didn't mean harm. He only wanted to protect me." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "The law, it will decide. But your compassion speaks well of you. And Monsieur Langston?" Eleanor's face hardened. "He'll face justice for what he did to Mother and our family. The merger is off. Father's agreed to find another way to save the company." As Eleanor left, Hastings turned to Poirot. "She's stronger than I thought, Poirot. To face all this, her mother's scandal, her father's disappointment. It's a lot to bear." "Indeed," Poirot replied, closing his notebook. "But strength, it comes from truth, not from secrets. Mademoiselle Eleanor has learned this, and it will carry her forward." Later, as the guests gathered for a subdued dinner, the atmosphere was markedly different. Sir Reginald, though still stern, showed a flicker of warmth toward Eleanor, a silent acknowledgement of her ordeal. Lady Beatrice, her sharp tongue softened, offered a rare word of praise for Eleanor's courage. Lawrence and Mrs. Whitmore sat close, their bond visibly strengthened, while Lydia's quiet presence was a steady anchor. Langston, however, dined alone, his future uncertain, as Inspector Grayson prepared to investigate his past. After dinner, Poirot drew Hastings to the terrace, where the rose garden lay bathed in moonlight. "Mon ami," he said, his voice low. "This case, it reminds us that truth is both a burden and a liberation. The Vermilion Vow, it was a chain of love and duty, but it was also a lie that could not hold. We, who seek justice, must always remember this." Hastings nodded, struck by Poirot's wisdom. "You saw it all, didn't you? The ribbon, the letters, the motives, right from the start." Poirot chuckled softly. "Not from the start, Hastings, but the little grey cells. They listen, they observe, and they wait. The truth, it always speaks, if one knows how to hear it."
More freely, its secrets laid bare. The case was nearly closed, but Hastings knew Poirot's work was never truly done, not while human hearts held such intricate mysteries. Chapter 14. The Letters Revealed. The morning light filtered through the heavy drapes of Ashbourne Hall, casting a soft glow over the library, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings awaited Eleanor Vane's return from London. The journey to retrieve the contents of the safe deposit box, accompanied by Inspector Grayson and Lydia Gray, had been planned with precision, and the household held its breath, anticipating the final unraveling of the Vermilion Vow. The manor, though quieter now, still bore the weight of secrets exposed, its inhabitants navigating the delicate balance between relief
and reckoning. Poirot sat at a polished oak table, his small hands folded, his eyes fixed on the mother-of-pearl box that had once held the crimson ribbon. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, his voice calm but expectant, "today we shall see the heart of Mademoiselle Eleanor's vow. The letters, they will confirm what we suspect, but they may also reveal more than she intends. The truth, it is never simple." Hastings, standing by the window, nodded thoughtfully. "I can't imagine what it's like for her, Poirot, facing those letters, knowing they'll expose her mother's affair and Langston's fraud. Do you think she'll make them public?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "That, Hastings, depends on her heart. She has carried this burden alone for too long. The letters may free her, or they may bind her to new choices." At precisely 11:47 a.m., the sound of a car on the gravel drive announced Eleanor's return. The guests gathered in the drawing room, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Sir Reginald stood by the fireplace, his stern demeanor softened by a flicker of hope. Lady Beatrice sat with her hands clasped, her usual sharpness tempered by concern. Lawrence Whitmore, his arm around Eleanor as she entered, looked protective yet anxious, while Mrs. Clara Whitmore hovered nearby, her eyes wary. Victor Langston, under police supervision, sat apart, his face drawn. Lydia Gray, pale but steadfast, stood by Eleanor's side, a quiet pillar of support. Dr. Julian Carver, though still cooperating with the authorities, was absent, his role in the affair now secondary. Eleanor carried a small, locked leather case, her expression resolute but weary. She placed it on the table, her hands trembling slightly as she unlocked it with a key from her pocket. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady despite the strain. "These are the letters. I've read them, with Lydia and Inspector Grayson. They tell the story I feared." Poirot rose, his bow courteous but firm. "Mademoiselle—"
Yellowed envelopes, tied with a faded crimson ribbon, the twin of the one found in the rose garden. She handed them to Poirot, who examined them with care, noting the elegant handwriting of Eleanor's mother, Margaret Vane. He opened one, reading aloud a passage to the room. "My dearest Victor, your promises are as fleeting as the tide, but I cannot turn away. The funds you've taken from the company, they must be repaid, or all is lost. I beg you, for my family's sake, make this right." The room fell silent, Langston's head bowing under the weight of exposure. Sir Reginald's face paled, his voice barely a whisper. "Margaret and Langston, how could I not have known?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "She kept it from you, father, to protect you. The letters show how Langston manipulated her, siphoning funds from the company for his own ventures. She made me promise to keep them hidden, to preserve our name. But when the merger was proposed, I knew he'd use it to bury his past. I couldn't let that happen." Poirot's gaze was piercing as he turned to Langston. "Monsieur, your silence has been costly. These letters, they prove your fraud, and an affair that betrayed a family. What say you?" Langston's voice was hoarse, defeated. "I loved Margaret once. The money, it was a mistake, one I tried to fix. When Eleanor resisted the merger, I panicked. I spread the story of the stranger to divert suspicion, but I never meant her harm." Lawrence stepped forward, his voice tight. "You nearly destroyed her, Langston. And for what? Your own greed?" Inspector Grayson interjected, his tone firm. "Mr. Langston, you'll come with us to answer for these charges. The letters are evidence enough." As Langston was led away, Eleanor turned to Poirot. "Monsieur, I don't know if I did right by exposing this. It hurts Father, Lawrence, everyone. But I couldn't keep carrying it alone." Poirot's expression softened. "Mademoiselle, the truth is a heavy burden, but it is also a release. Your mother's vow was one of love, but it was yours to break. You have chosen honesty, and that is strength." Lady Beatrice, her voice unusually gentle, spoke up. "Eleanor, I was wrong to judge you. You've shown more courage than I ever gave you credit for." Sir Reginald, his eyes glistening, took his daughter's hand. "I failed you, Eleanor, by not seeing your struggle. We'll rebuild, together." As the room emptied,
Mademoiselle Eleanor, she carried it alone until now. As they prepared to leave the library, the case of the Vermilion Vow felt nearly closed, but Hastings knew its echoes would linger in Ashbourne Hall, a testament to the power of truth and the cost of secrets. Chapter 15. The Quiet Departure. The final day at Ashbourne Hall unfolded under a sky of unbroken blue. The Devon countryside serene as if untouched by the storm of secrets that had swept through the manor. The revelation of the letters, exposing Victor Langston's fraud and Margaret Vane's hidden affair, had lifted the veil of mystery, but left in its wake a delicate web of healing and reconciliation. Eleanor Vane, now free from the burden of her vermilion vow, moved through the house with a quiet strength, her resolve tempered by the pain of truths laid bare. Captain Hastings, packing his valise in his guest room, felt a bittersweet satisfaction. The case was solved, yet the human cost lingered in his thoughts. Hercule Poirot, ever the picture of order, stood in the entrance hall, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache impeccably waxed. He adjusted his hat with a precise gesture, his green eyes surveying the manor one last time. Hastings joined him, sensing the detective's readiness to depart, as was his custom once the truth was revealed. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant, "the affair of the Vermilion Vow is complete. The little grey cells, they have done their work, and Mademoiselle Eleanor is free to live without the shadow of her mother's secret. Yet, I wonder, does the heart ever truly escape such a burden?" Hastings nodded, glancing toward the drawing room where Eleanor sat with Lawrence Whitmore, their heads bent close in quiet conversation. "She's stronger than I expected, Poirot. To face her father, to forgive Dr. Carver, to stand by Lawrence. It's remarkable. But what of the family? Can they move past this?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "The heart, it is resilient, Hastings. Sir Reginald will mourn his wife's betrayal, but he has his daughter's love to anchor him. Lady Beatrice, for all her sharpness, has softened, and Monsieur Whitmore, he sees in Eleanor not just a fiancée, but a woman of courage. They will heal in time." As they spoke, Sir Reginald approached, his stern features softened by gratitude. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," he said, his voice gruff but sincere. "I owe you more than I can express. You've brought my daughter back and uncovered the truth, painful though it was. How can I repay you?" Poirot's bow was courteous. "Monsieur, the truth is its own reward. But if I may offer a suggestion, cherish Mademoiselle Eleanor's honesty. She has carried a heavy vow for your family's sake. Let her now live for herself." Sir Reginald nodded, his eyes glistening. "I will, monsieur." Langston's taint. Lydia Gray joined them, her auburn hair catching the light as she offered a shy smile. "Monsieur Poirot, I can't thank you enough. Eleanor and I, we made mistakes, but you saw through them without judgment." Poirot's gaze was kind. "Mademoiselle Gray, your loyalty to your friend was your guide, even if it led you astray. You have both learned the cost of secrets.
Live now in the light. As the guests gathered to bid farewell, Lawrence and Eleanor approached, hand in hand. Lawrence's face, once haggard, now held a quiet determination. Monsieur Poirot, you've given us a second chance. We'll take it slowly, but we'll make it right. Eleanor's smile was radiant, though touched with sorrow. I was so afraid of losing everything. Father, Lawrence, our name. But you showed me that truth is worth the pain. Thank you. Poirot inclined his head. Mademoiselle, the Vermilion Vow was your mother's legacy, but your courage is your own. Use it well, Mrs. Clara Whitmore. Her protective demeanor softened, added, You've done my son a great service, Monsieur Poirot. I misjudged Eleanor, and I'm sorry for it. Poirot waved a dismissive hand. The heart, it judges too quickly, madame, but it also learns. As the car was brought around, Inspector Grayson approached, his notebook tucked away. Monsieur Poirot, Langston's confessed to the fraud, and we're investigating his past dealings. Dr. Carver's likely to face a reprimand, but Eleanor's testimony will help him. You've made our job easier. Poirot's eyes twinkled. The little gray cells, Inspector. They merely point the way. You have done the rest. With farewells exchanged, Poirot and Hastings stepped into the car, the manor receding behind them as they drove toward the station. Hastings gazed out at the rolling hills, reflecting on the case. You saw it all, Poirot. The ribbon, the letters, the motives. But it was Eleanor's heart that tied it together, wasn't it? Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, his voice reflective. The crime, it is always a story of the heart. Love, fear, duty, betrayal. We solve the puzzle, but it is the human soul that tells the tale. This case, it reminds us that truth, though painful, is the only path to peace. As the car wound through the countryside, Ashbourne Hall faded into the distance, its secrets laid bare, its wounds beginning to heal. Poirot leaned back, his eyes closing, a faint smile on his lips. The Vermilion Vow was broken, and Hercule Poirot, with his little gray cells, had once again brought order to chaos, leaving behind a world a little lighter for his